Now here we have the Trump International Hotel and Tower here from 2009. Second tallest building in the city, we sort of already covered that. This is the work of it's called the AMA Plaza. It's a very simple building, and Mises' design philosophy was less is more. And so his buildings are very elegant. They're kind of pared down to the bare bones. And here the bones are the steel structure that you see on the outside, these beams that were just welded to the outside to sort of emphasize verticality and to show that the building is constructed out of steel on the inside. Mies came to Chicago in the 1930s from Germany. In Germany, he was the director of the Bauhaus School, famous modernism school. When he arrived in Chicago, he set up a practice. He also began teaching at what would become the Illinois Institute of Technology. So Mies, he had a lot of students that studied under him. One of his students built the building right next door, which is called Marina City, which is very different than what his teacher's building looked like. Mies loved steel, he loved the rectilinearity of it, the simpleness of it. Goldberg loved concrete and how you could shape it into any form that you want. So here you see a complex of buildings that's known as Marina City. Two circular apartment towers, it's sometimes called the corn cobs of Chicago. There was an office building constructed as well, that's now a hotel. And then a theater building, and then a base building that contains shops, and it's become a lot of restaurants today in the marina here as well. So these are poured-in-place concrete buildings. They poured a central mast first that went all the way up the building, and then they poured each floor, sort of they cantilever out at the end with those balconies. So this was built in 1967. The idea was to build office, living, and cultural spaces all in one block, to create a project that would be exciting to draw young people back into the city to live here in the 1960s. In the 60s, a lot of people had moved out to the suburbs. This was the first building ever done where they mixed all these functions together in one site. Now here we have a building of sort of green glass. This is the American Bar Association Tower from 1987. This is the last building that was designed by Bruce Graham, who was an architect with SOM that designed the John Hancock Building and the Willis Tower. This was built for the Quaker Oats Company, now it's for the American Bar Association. Green colored glass, that was specified by Bruce Graham to sort of pick up on the color of the water here, which is green. Now we have a very handsome building here that was built as a warehouse of all things. It's offices today, it's been converted. It's called the Reed Murdoch Center. Built in 1914, it was a warehouse for the Monarch Food Company. Their symbol was a lion. And if you look at the top of the tower, on the corners, you might see terracotta lion heads poking out there, sort of advertising of the building that's still there, even though the company is long gone. So there's also some restaurants here, water taxi stop as well, in the Reed Murdoch Center. Now, the next building coming up is stainless steel and glass, built in 2009. It is designed by architects Picard Chilton, who are based in New Haven, Connecticut. So 2009, this building has a lot of sustainable concepts in its design. It uses two green roofs for holding water. It uses water from the river for air conditioning as opposed to a cooling tower, and it used lots of locally sourced materials. That all gives this building a LEED rating of Gold LEED. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's a point system that architects use to certify that they are following best practices in sustainability. Now you see the L train going over us. This is one of two bridges in the downtown that has L tracks that go across the top. The L is part of the CTA system of buses and trains. The L was started in 1892 with a line that went from downtown down to the south side where the World's Plumbing Exposition site was. Now here we have a massive building on the right. This is the Merchandise Mart from 1930. When this building opened its doors back then, it became the world's biggest building as far as square footage inside. The building is so large that at one time it had its own zip code just for the building. Today it's mostly offices. It was designed by Graham Anderson Probst and White. Now, you see these heads that are on these posts here? Those are sculptures of men who led department stores, sort of merchandise kings in front of the merchandise mart. So there are statues of Julius Rosenwald, who's the head of Sears, Montgomery Ward, Marshall Field, Mr. Filene, I don't know what his first name was. But when David Letterman was in town once, he saw those and he said that they looked like the world's largest Pez dispensers. Like, yeah, every time I look at them now, I cannot get that out of my head. So here we're coming into a part of the river known as the Junction. This is the main branch of the Chicago River. It's pretty short. It just runs from the lake to here. North branch of the river is to our right, where this boat's going to go. And then the south branch of the river is to the left. This is the junction where they all come together. That point of land that's over here where the trees are, that's called Wolf Point. That's where people began to settle in numbers in the early 1800s. And this is where they decided to call this area Chicago. It came from the Native American word pronounced Chicago. It meant one of three things. It's never been directly translated, but it means either skunk, smelly onion, or strong. So this spot here, 2 new office buildings going up. The building with the parabolic arch is River Point. And then 150 North Riverside, the building there that has that angled bottom that is about 60 stories tall. So this is a hot area for development. New condo building has just been built over to our left there. Now this curved glass building on our right is very elegant. This is an office building by Cone Pedersen and Fox called 333 West Wacker from 1983. The architects here simply curved the building to reinforce this big sweep of the river. The glass, again, it's a sort of green reflective color, banding of dark and light in there as well that gives it some scale. The bottom of the building is solid stone. That's where the mechanical systems are all down there. The same architects designed the building right next door in 1985. It's called 225 West Wacker. This building celebrates bridges. There are gray panels that run up and down the middle of the building that have rivets in them. Those rivets are meant to remind you the ones on all the bridges. And there's a bridge in the building. If you look up at the very top, notice that arch up there? That's actually a bridge that people walk across to go from one tower to the next up there. Now there's a lot of construction going on here. It's a pretty exciting project. They're extending the Riverwalk 3 blocks to go all the way past the 333 building. This is supposed to be completed by Christmas time. Now the process here is that when they start doing this work, they come out into the water 25 feet. And then they pound in a wall of steel sheet piling. Then they pump out the water behind it, and it leaves an empty chamber that they fill up with gravel. So it's like a little landfill that comes out 25 feet. And then they cap it off with a concrete deck, and then they add all the plantings, the benches, the pedestrian amenities, which is what they're doing here. You can see the blocks of limestone that they're now attaching to this concrete. They have these catwalks that go underneath here. The workers here work from barges and boats, not from land. And so when you see them working, they're not only wearing hard hats, but they're wearing life jackets as well. So here we have coming up 3 blocks of recently completed Riverwalk segments. This block is called the River Theater, and it is an amphitheater basically. They have concerts here sometimes at night by bands that play on the walkway there, and street performers. During the day, people just sit and watch boats go by. The next block is called the Cove. It is for canoe and kayak launches, and there's also restaurants in these next 2 blocks as well. Now to our right, we have a building with this white stone. It's an example of postmodernism in architecture. 77 West Wacker from 1993 by Ricardo Bofill. It has these sort of Italian Renaissance forms down here in the ground floor, and at the top of the building it's a Greek temple. During that time, architects mixed together modernism and historic features, all in the same building. Now, the next block is called the Marina of the Riverwalk. It's for the docking of larger ships, as you can see. And if you look ahead of us, look up. You'll notice a building that has gold shining in the sun up there. That gold up there, That is the Hard Rock Hotel building. That's genuine gold leaf up there. The rest of the building is green terracotta. And they say that the architects, who are called the Burnham Brothers, were inspired by a champagne bottle they saw at a New Year's Eve party for that gold and green color scheme. This place is nuts. The City Winery is very popular. And it has a cool wood bench there that people sit at. They can look at the river, but then it turns into a bar on the back side of the bench. Double purpose structure there. Now, I don't know if you can hear me above this cigarette boat here, but on the right we have a very ornate building here of yellow stone. It has a rotunda at the top that has a dome on top of it. This building was known as the Jewelers Building for many years. It was built in 1923. That rotunda up at the top of the building at one time housed a speakeasy that was run by Al Capone himself. It was called the Stratosphere Lounge. Now to our right we have a white structure that's the skinniest skyscraper in Chicago. Here it is, white terracotta. Up at the top, it's like a rocket ship coming out of the top of the building. The floors are only 10 feet wide up there. The building is known as 75 East Wacker. It's by Riddle and Riddle Architects. It was built in 1929. And right next to it is a glass building. You can see it says London House on top. That's an addition that they built to the building that's just to the left that's stone. It's right on the corner. This is the city's newest boutique hotel. It opened about 3 months ago, London House. The stone building here beforehand was an office building that was built in 1923, designed by Alfred Auschuler. As we come around here, you'll see it has a really wonderful sort of curved stone facade that has a Roman triumphal arch at the bottom that still has London Guarantee's name on it, and a colonnade up at the top. On the very top of the building, you'll see here there's a circular sort of temple-like structure, and that is part of the roof bar of this place. Pretty swanky place. And I heard, I don't know if this is true, but I heard that it costs you could rent that cupola, the temple, out for $10,000 and have your wedding photographs taken up there. That sounds outrageous, but you never know what they're going to charge you in this city for something like that. So folks are going to be pulling into our dock here momentarily. I do have one final safety request of everyone, and that is if everybody can find a seat and remain seated for the last portion of the tour.
Look at all these little birds coming in there. Look at the little birds. There's too many.